Spoiler alert, if you haven't played the 4.0 Archon quest, please come back after you played it. Childe in Fontaine. A question we've been asking ourselves ever since the 4.0 trailer dropped. Why is Childe in Fontaine and what is his true purpose? Not only that, why was Childe put on trial for a crime that he had no idea about? Moreover, why was he deemed guilty for that very same crime? Watch till the end of the video to find out. So as you all know, in the 4.0 Archon quest, we randomly meet Childe in the city of Fontaine and then he fights a mob, during which he loses his elemental powers and his vision starts glitching, following which he drops this massive lore bomb on us. You may already know that Childe fell into an unknown abyss at the age of 14 and was trapped there for 3 months. Now this is where he meets his master Skirk and learns his foul legacy and all of the combat techniques that he uses right now. Now this particular story of Childe is stated in the description of a new weapon that was released in 4.0 called the Ballad of the Fjords. Now if you check the description, it tells us a story about young Ajax who fell into an unknown abyss, sailed the ship into the belly of a huge whale and also fought a vicious dragon for 7 days straight. Now according to Childe, he had once asked his master Skirk why she had chosen to train him, and she replied by saying that he had awakened it and that he had traces of it on himself. But what is this it that Childe is talking about? Now according to Childe, it may refer to a particular dream that Childe saw when he fell into the abyss. In that particular dream, Childe was in the bottom of the ocean and surrounded by water everywhere, and suddenly he wakes up to a huge whale who was so massive that he could barely breathe. Now this scene sounds very similar to a particular scene that we saw in the 4.0 teaser where Fremne is found sinking into the depths of the ocean and suddenly a huge whale-like shadow appears behind him and he loses his breath. Now this scene in the teaser is accompanied by the narration of a character called Igeria who says that the original sin is the fairest and that everybody sinks. Now popular speculation suggests that Igeria was a former Hydro Archon and these words were her warning to the current Hydro Archon. Now this particular narration by Igeria can be seen in line with the current prophecy surrounding Fontaine, which says that all people of Fontaine will be dissolved into water and only the Hydro Archon will remain, weeping on her throne. Now the word sin is quite familiar to us all. From the Archon quest Caribert, we know about the existence of the Sinner as well as Clothar Alberich who created the Abyss Order. Now the people of the Abyss were cursed and they were sinners in the eyes of the gods. And if you check the Fontaine prophecy, it says that every person in Fontaine is born with a particular sin. So does this mean that the people of Fontaine are cursed too? And this curse would be in the form of the people dissolving when they come into contact with the water from the primordial sea. Now coming back to Childe, in the Archon quest part 2, we saw that Childe randomly got accused in the trial for the case of the missing women. Now, even though we found out who the real criminal was, they had to release a final verdict on Childe, who was the initial accused of the case. And even though Neuvillette said that Childe was not guilty in this case, the oratress thought differently and said that Childe is guilty. Which is followed up by Childe getting pissed and tries to beat his way out of court, but then gets his ass handed to him by Neuvillette. Now the question is, why was Childe deemed guilty for this case which started long before he was even born and he probably has nothing to do with it? Was it because he was just a fatui, or was it because he's generally a bad guy that the orators thought, oh, this guy is bad news, let's just put him in jail? But that sounds so silly. There's gotta be a reason why the judicial power in Fontaine thought that Childe was guilty. Now if you remember at the start of the video, I talked about the whale who left its traces on Childe, and also the whale which appears in the 4.0 teaser at the part where Fremne is shown. There's this old Russian tale about a Tsar called Ivan and a miracle whale who was a star beast who apparently swallows the sea. So now coming back to the game, we know from Neuvillette that the primordial sea no longer exists on the surface of Teyvat. But now from the Archon quest, we know that there are still remnants of the primordial sea water existing. So now going back to the Russian tale of Ivan and the miracle whale which I told you earlier about, could it be possible that this whale we are talking about from Childe's story and Fremne teaser could have maybe swallowed the entire primordial sea? I mean, it does sound kind of a bit of a stretch, but in a game where a drunkard can be a god, I think anything is possible. But in the rare possibility that what I said is indeed true, the significance of showing the whale in the 4.0 teaser means that the entire primordial sea is coming to Fontaine. And we know that for the Fontaine prophecy to be true, every single person from Fontaine has got to be exposed to water from the primordial sea. And it could be possible that the reason why the orators found Childe guilty was not because it sensed the trace of some whale on Childe, but because it sensed the traces of the primordial sea. And according to the previous two trials that we saw, the people who were convicted were also in contact with the primordial sea. Also, I should mention that it is possible that the Oratress contains the Hydronosis, which is a power from the heavens or Celestia, and it is quite natural for a divine power to find power from the primordial sea, which is quite likely an abyssal power, as a threat. So I guess the reason why Childe's elemental powers don't work is because finally the abyssal powers within him are repelling the celestial or the divine powers of the vision. Now there's one more thing I would like to point out. Skirk tells Childe that she's teaching him these techniques because it is going to help him in the future. Could this be a subtle foreshadowing saying that Childe is actually the one who is going to save Fontaine from this said prophecy? I mean, it could be a possibility given how much Fontaine already revolves around Childe. So anyways, that's it guys. Let me know what you guys think about this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.